Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is part 2 of the video series that I'm doing that is called Learn to Read Tarot. So in the previous reading, we covered the major arcanas, which represent the divinely ordained life experiences or like major overarching life experiences that everybody deals with in life. And now we are moving into the different suits which deal with the mundane aspects of life that we go through, that we experience based on the astrology, the planetary influences, based on people's emotions and other influences that surround us as well. So so the suit of wands represents fire as well as creativity. It represents spirituality as well as anger overall. So depending on the cards that come out in the reading will give you an indication whether or not it's of a spiritual nature, a creative nature, or related to anger and those types of emotions, fiery emotions, as well as passion. So sometimes it's not like on the level of anger, but it can be passion, you know. So, and when I speak of creativity, it's about like artistic creativity as well as actual creativity, creating life. So here we have the Ace of Wands. This is like the hand of the divine bestowing a spark of fire, creativity, passion into your life. In a fertility reading, this can indicate the birth of a male child. Upright, it represents creativity, inspiration, new creative ideas. In the reverse, it can represent hesitation, delays, or being uninspired. Then you have the Two of Wands, which shows a young person looking out into the world, looking at his options, branching out, inspired thinking, inspired planning. The little definition I have says awaiting results, making a choice, and future planning. To me, it also represents creative partnerships, and also depending on the other cards that come out in a reading, if you're doing like a romantic reading, it can indicate a romantic partnership, a passionate romantic partnership, or a creative spirit or spiritual connection as well in a partnership. Excuse me. Then we have the Three of Wands. And so this would be the time in our lives where we've received the information that we needed in order to really move forward and branch out into the world, in order to realize our creative spark and our passions and the things that motivates us and drives us. And so here you can see he's looking out to the ocean, he's looking at all the ships, and it's like, okay, you know, waiting for my ship to come in kind of thing, looking to see which ship he's gonna get on. It indicates expansion, potential travel, growth, and teamwork. For me, it also indicates somebody who's considering branching out to work in a different location from where you're currently working. So in the reverse position, it can represent obstacles, disappointment, and initial setbacks. Then you have the Four of Wands. So if you imagine that Two of Wands is a creative, passionate, romantic partnership. Three of Wands is branching out, planning. The Four of Wands would be the wedding celebration, so to speak. The celebration of establishing a household together with someone, of creating a family, the celebration of creating a family. So this can indicate weddings as well as birth celebrations, like baby showers. It does represent happy families, homecoming, and reunions. In the reverse position, it can represent discord, insecurity, and lack of community spirit. But it is in the upright, it is a very auspicious card and a very happy card. You see the house in the background. So let's see, moving on to the Five of Wands. So sometimes conflict comes in. So people living in a house together, what starts off as a happy household can sometimes turn into a battlefield. So depending on the situation, there can be conflicts and competition that arise. And there's, different scenarios for life, of course. This can represent competition in business. This can represent competition in romantic relationships. This can represent physical conflict, domestic violence, those negative types of things happening as well. But again, it all depends on the other cards that come out in the reading to indicate, the severity and what type of conflict it really is. So it's competition, rivalry, obstacles, and challenges. In the reverse, it can represent exaggeration, avoidance, or even finding a solution. So in this particular situation, this card coming out in the reverse is not necessarily a bad thing. It represents the end of a conflict, finding a solution to something that you've been fighting over for quite a while. So like if you've been getting the Five of Wands in your readings consistently, and then all of a sudden it comes out in reverse, it's like, oh, finally, it's so but my analogy that I used, that I'll be using to explain this concept of this mundane suit of wands, is that it would represent a situation where you've branched out, you've established a home, and now you and possibly somebody else are fighting over that house. Then we move into the Six of Wands, which is indicating that you were the victor in that situation. So whatever you were fighting over, whatever the conflict was, you ended up being victorious in this situation. If it comes out in a reading for you, of course. If you're reading for somebody else, then it could indicate that that person is victorious or will be victorious in a situation. Or whoever the indicator card is, again, it can represent somebody else in their life who is victorious in a certain situation over them as well. But you're being celebrated, you're receiving a lot of recognition. This can also represent social media recognition, praises as well, just people speaking your praises. So the Six of Wands is victory, recognition, award, good news, and success. And in the reverse, it is delayed success, shame, or dishonor. Then moving into the Seven of Wands, you get to a point where you've had a battle over something, you were victorious, and now you have to defend your position. And so sometimes after you've won over something, people will step in and challenge you. And that's what this card represents. And so it represents a situation where you may have to defend yourself. And so it does represent defensiveness, assertiveness, and protect yourself. In the reverse, it represents hypervigilance, hopelessness, or feeling defeated. Sorry if you all can hear my air conditioner and it's loud. I apologize. So, moving on to the Eight of Wands. To me, the Eight of Wands does represent a stage of this story where you are able to find a solution to a problem and able to negotiate. So it represents communication, negotiations, travel, forward motion, progress, are all things that I think of when I think of the Eight of Wands. It to me is an auspicious card when it's moving, when it's in the upright. So it represents new movement, quick change, speed, and action. In the reverse, it represents slowing down, getting stuck, or exercising patience. To me, in the reverse, it can also represent miscommunication, as well as the need to hold back from speaking, and or really putting more work into, like if you have to send an email or if you have to send some sort of major communication, to put more effort and consideration into what you're sending and what you're planning on expressing, to make sure that there aren't any miscommunications. So okay, that's the Eight of Wands. And then moving into the Nine of Wands. So in this story, this represents the individual who has gone from having a happy household to somebody who has had to fight for their house and fight over their house, and they were victorious, and then they had to defend themselves again, and then they were finally able to make some progress and have some successful negotiations and have some positive communication, and so now they've reached a stage where they're holding it all together. They're still victorious. They're still standing in their power. All of the wands are standing upright. They're a bit bruised, but they're still holding it together. And so it can represent, again, like the Six of Wands, when you got public recognition for winning your first battle. Now you're getting recognition for doing all those other things, for really holding it together. And so the Nine of Wands does represent boundary setting, persistence, and self-reliance. In the reverse, it can represent adversity, giving up, delays, or surrender. Then we move into the Ten of Wands. And in this story, it represents a stage of life that you get to. So after the Nine of Wands, when you have successfully accomplished, many things and held a situation together and stood up for yourself, and but now you are taking all of your wands and you are ready to walk straight out of your lush, beautiful village up into the mountains. And so this card, instead of doing that, this card is really telling you it's time to put down the burdens. You have carried so many burdens. After everything that you've gone through, it's time to delegate. It's time to hand off some of these wands to someone else. It represents struggling too much unnecessarily. And so 10 of Wands is overwhelmed, carrying too many burdens and stress. In the reverse, it can represent exhaustion, pressure, burdened, and burnout. So even in the upright, I would say burnout as well, of course. So, okay, now we're moving into the court cards. So we have the Page of Wands. In a reading, the court cards can represent individuals. And so this would be a younger individual, a younger person, can be a fire sign like an Aries, Leo, or Sagittarius. It would be a young child or just a teenager who is very energetic, very creative, has lots of energy, maybe even a bit distracted, and just, full of life, very vivacious. So it does represent impulsiveness, a sense of adventure, and an active person. In the reverse, it can represent someone who is unreliable, someone who's hasty, someone who's pessimistic, or complications. Then you have the Knight of Wands. And so all of the wands in the pages are messengers, and the wands or the knights are also messengers. So the page would be kind of like the first little messenger that somebody would send out, as a feeler to send a letter or a note or something like that. And then the knight they would send in when it was time to negotiate in person, right? They would send somebody else before the king and queen came in. So depending on which suit it is, depends, will indicate the type of communication that's happening. So when the wand shows up, it's either passion, creativity, or anger as well. And so again, depending on the other cards that show up. So creativity, passion, lusty, free-spirited person. It can also represent impulsiveness, self-doubt, a daredevil, or hesitation in the reverse. The Queen of Wands represents, and these are all fire signs. I forgot to mention that about the Knight of Wands. That is also Aries, Leo, or Sagittarius. This is more Leo energy because of the lion and the sunflower associated with the Sun card in the major arcana, which is the representation of Leo. This is a woman who is very confident, very creative, very vivacious and energetic, can represent somebody who's also seen as being very beautiful and put together. And so the negative aspects of this card can represent somebody who's too concerned with their outward appearance and how they look. So it represents ambition, confidence, self-assurance, and a feisty person. Or in the reverse, feeling unworthy, nagging, or creative blockages as well. So last but not least, we have the King of Wands, who is the masculine energy to the Queen of Wands, which would be the feminine energy. Again, is a creative person, spiritually passionate person also as well. Can represent a very angry person. Again, just depending on how, if it comes out upright or reverse, or depending on the other cards that are coming out along with it. So this says here, power, courage, bold and outgoing personality. In the reverse, it represents somebody who abuses their power, a bully, someone who's ruthless and big-headed. So I hope you all found this little storyline helpful when interpreting tarot cards and learning to read tarot cards. Thank you so much for watching. Please stay tuned for part 3, where we will discuss the suit of cards. I hope you have a blessed day, and thank you again. Bye-bye.